This is the SoundLab at Home, Australia's top rock program with all the best guests from coast to coast and around the world. Here's your host, music industry veteran, director of the SoundLab Music School, and author of Why Learn Music, Melbourne's Princess of Rock, Leah Gallin.
In this Australian exclusive interview, I am joined by my dear family friends, Norm Harris, the world's #1 guitar guru, and his daughter Sarah, to talk about the legacy that is Norman's rare guitars. Hi and welcome. I'm very excited today to have two wonderful guests with me. I've got Norm Harris from Norm's Rare Guitars, and I've got his daughter Sarah, and they're in LA, in Tijuana, California. How are you guys going over there?
The store is not technically open right now, so on Tuesdays and Fridays we go in and we ship stuff out, and I've been helping him with that. The public isn't allowed in, unfortunately, so it's by appointment only. I mean, it's been impacted severely, but all things considered, it's still doing well. So
we're selling a lot online, thank goodness.
That's the way of the future now, isn't it? It seems. Same with the SoundLab Music School. We've put our lessons online, so it's been an interesting transition. Obviously, in terms of new business, that's a new way that we're doing things.
And we're having people come in by appointment, but we're just not letting crowds of people come in because of the obvious reasons.
So are you getting some interesting guests? I saw that you had a photo with you wearing masks with Slash.
He came in the other day, and I decided when all the COVID stuff started happening, I said, you know, what if this is the end of the store? Because he's a type 1 diabetic. It's terrible for him. He can't interact with the public. He can't shake hands or take pictures with people like he normally does. And he interacts with people a lot. And he's a lovable guy. He gives hugs, and it's a really warm environment at the store, and now it's like he can't do any of that and everyone's wearing masks. So I thought to myself, you know, what if the store were to come to an end? I want to have all of this documented. So we have a whole crew that's doing a documentary on Norman's rare guitars. And so we've had Slash so far. We had Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters. We've had Jeff Garlin, who's a huge actor and comedian here.
He's on a show called Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is one of my favorites.
Fantastic show.
John Five, he was the guitarist for Marilyn Manson. Now he's doing Rob Zombie. Max Greenfield, who's a big actor out here.
On The Neighborhood.
Malcolm McDowell from Clockwork Orange, and his son Beckett McDowell, who is an amazing guitar player in his own right.
Goo Goo Dolls.
Yeah, the Goo Goo Dolls.
Dan Estrin from
Hoobastank, yeah.
More lined up.
I've been doing something quite similar with my father, going through all of his imagery and, you know, stuff. He just gave me the whole lot and said, do what you can with it, because, you know, this is the time to be doing that, and sort of taking a throwback, I suppose. Norm, so how did you meet my father, and what's the connection there?
For many, many years, we did business. He was into vintage guitars as well as being a distributor in Australia for several major brands. And we would see each other at the guitar shows and trade shows and stuff, and we became friendly. When you guys were coming into town, I think it was for an AM show, I said, why don't you guys stay with us? And you and my daughter Sarah became very, very close, and I'm glad that you guys have still remained close.
Your father said, oh, I want you to get on the phone before you actually meet. And so I got on the phone with you, and I said, I know that you have koalas and kangaroos out there, and you had a joke going, an inside joke with yourself, I guess, that you had a pet koala. And then you finally told me, no, that's not really how it works in Australia.
You have shrimp on the Barbie, though, right?
We do have shrimp on the Barbie, sometimes, yes. I think the funny one was when you took me to Disneyland and I kept it up, and all your friends were asking me if I was a friend of the Gibsons. And I said, oh, what Gibson guitar? No. They were like, no, Jackie and Mel Gibson. You know, you guys live just round the corner, like Australia's a tiny little place.
His kids went to school with Sarah, actually.
Well, that's why they said it, because they assumed if I was from Australia that I would definitely know Mel Gibson's family, you know? Very sweet. Norm, what was your background and how did you get into music?
When I lived in Miami, I was buying and selling guitars kind of as a sideline. I came out to Los Angeles with a band. My band was managed by Little Richard's brother, and Richard and his brother were the ones that really got us to come out to Los Angeles to meet with Warner Brothers. I found myself in the land of opportunity for musical instruments. So I stayed, opened a store, and Little Richard was responsible for a lot of that.
So how did the collection actually come about? I mean, you've still obviously got the majority of the collection. Is it an ever-evolving thing?
When I came out to California, the opportunity to buy things, because the Fender factory was out here, all these professional musicians would come to LA trying to make it big, so they'd bring their guitars with them. All the recording studios were out here, the movie studios were out here. So there was just a lot of opportunity that I was very fortunate that I fell into at the right time.
When did you actually open the store?
I opened the store in 1975, but I came to Los Angeles from Florida in 1970.
Do you want to tell us about some of the biggest artists you've had through, and who's your top person that you've had in of all time, would you say?
George Harrison was my first really big customer. I had a guitar that was stolen from him, and it was sold in a store in Hollywood. And I would buy and sell guitars and consign guitars to a lot of different stores around Los Angeles. And he went into one of my friend's stores because they contacted the guy that actually bought the guitar from this store in Hollywood. And he bought it in good faith. And he just wanted his guitar back. When they contacted the guy that had the guitar, he said, "I'd be happy to give it back to you, but I would like a similar guitar, a late 50s Les Paul Standard, in trade." He went to George and his road manager, Mal Evans, who was the Beatles' road manager. They were together. And they went to a lot of different guitar stores looking for a late 50s Les Paul Standard, and nobody had one. And when he went to this one friend of mine's store called University Music, he said, "Well, I know a guy who's got 3 of them." And that was me. And I was just living in an apartment in Sherman Oaks. I went over to my friend's store. He called me in the morning and said, "I need you to come over. I've got a very special customer. You got to come over." And I said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "I can't tell you, but just come over. Take my word for it." I said, "I'm not coming over." He said, "Come over now." So I walked through the door of his store, which is about 20 minutes away. When I walked in, nobody was in there but my friend. And I said, "What's the deal? I just drove all the way over here. It sounded really important." He said, "Well, George Harrison wants to buy a Sunburst Les Paul." And I said, "Yeah, well, where is he?" He said, "Well, he's next door just having a slice of pizza." And as he said that, George and Mal Evans walked in the door. I actually took him back to my apartment, and my wife Marlene was still in her nightgown at the apartment, or her bathroom. And I said to her, "George Harrison's coming in." And she kind of looked at me like, "Yeah, right." George followed in, and it was just a big experience. And he told friends. There was a guy named Robbie Robertson who played with the band called The Band. And they did the movie The Last Waltz. And Robbie turned me on to all kinds of people. He brought Bob Dylan in, he brought Joni Mitchell and Robin Ford. And by word of mouth, it spread, and it helped me build the clientele.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
Nobody in LA at the time was dealing in vintage instruments. So if you wanted older guitars, I mean, you could buy new guitars in a lot of places, but nobody really had a selection of vintage stuff. Word kind of got around, and one person told the next. And then in 1975, I ended up opening a store in Reseda, little 500 square foot store.
And it's the same location? It's never moved?
We were in a 500 square foot store, then we moved to an 1,800 square foot store. I know you guys are on the metric system, so the square foot might throw you, but it was very small. And then we moved to 1,800, and the store we're in now is 6,000 square feet, and we're busting out of that.
So lots of guitars. Hi, I'm Leah Gallin, the Managing Director of the SoundLab Music School here in Prahran. This is our wonderful venue. We've been here for over 10 years. Now we've got the 2 options. We've got our fantastic teachers live back at the venue, or we've been running our lessons online via Zoom. So whether you're after online or live lessons, contact us today. And so online's doing well as well, you're saying?
My daughter Sarah and my son Jordan, they basically insisted that I get with it and get on the internet, and that's really made a big difference in our business.
How does that go, selling vintage instruments online?
You have to describe them very accurately. We're really careful. We get very, very few returns, and we've never been in a lawsuit.
And purchasing instruments obviously is such a tactile thing that you want to see it and then feel and touch it and play it, and that no two instruments are alike.
We try to describe the playability, we'll say, there's a little bit of fret wear, or there's a lot of fret wear, it's a candidate for refret, or if the tuners were changed, there's anything, if it was a refinish or anything, we try to be very accurate in those types of descriptions. But some people just physically cannot be where we are, so that's the only way that they can do it. But we prefer selling in person, and I like shaking people's hands and looking people in the eye and talking to them face to face. That's kind of the old school way of doing business.
In light of COVID, are there some new things happening in the horizon of the business? I see that you're doing podcasts and other things like that, and you've always got interesting content coming out, but is that sort of stuff that you're focused on?
We have a thing called the Guitar of the Day that we've been doing for a number of years now, and there's, I think, about 440,000 subscribers to that. And we have about 2,000 videos, some with some famous people, some with up-and-comers that are young, or even old-timers that are good that people should know about. And then, store hijinks, anything that we think might be interesting to the public. And I've been really, surprised at how many people are interested, because when we first did it, I did it kicking and screaming that I really didn't want to do it. And everybody, all the young people said, come on, you got to get with it. And when I did it, it really turned out to be a very good thing for us.
I understand that one. I think I built my father's first website for him. I think I had a budget of about $400 or $500 Australian, and he said, you don't need that. We didn't need computers. Amazing how the world's changed. I guess you guys have got some really interesting content, and it should be shared, as you were saying. It's kind of this legacy that you've got and a history that, younger generations of people don't understand about music,
All I can say is we've been very lucky. But one thing I'll say about your dad, he's one of the toughest negotiators I know. So if he was negotiating with you to try to keep you within $400 or $500, that seems about right. I mean, by the time I got through dealing with your dad, I didn't know whether I was happy or whether I was just going to go in the corner and shoot myself. Smart guy and a very terrific negotiator. I consider him still family.
He's fantastic like that. He definitely is, and he hasn't changed one bit. And the reason that we're doing this show, I suppose, is to try and diversify what we've been doing, to come up with new ideas and to offer our client base that we've got something that's interesting and different, and using the history that we've had.
Fantastic musicians that have come out of Australia, great groups. Tommy Emmanuel, one of the greatest guitar players of all time. A lot of different bands that came out of Australia, including the Bee Gees, actually. There's a lot of great music that is happening right now. And there's a lot of really great undiscovered acts that a lot of times we're blessed by getting some of these great people coming into the store that are not as well known. I'm very friendly with Joe Bonamassa. He's almost like family to me. And he's sent in a lot of fantastic people. And so many other really great players have come in through Joe, and he tries to help a lot of the younger talent or these people that need to be recognized. And we try to do the same. We try to, give some people, since we have a platform, give people a chance to see some important people that are coming up.
Who's been purchasing off you guys of late with some notoriety?
We've had a lot of different people coming in and that purchase from us on a regular basis and love the store. Dave Amato from REO Speedwagon is a regular customer, and I call him a victim. He comes in quite often. There's this one actor, Jeff Garland, just bought some beautiful guitars for me. The Goo Goo Dolls, Johnny Resnick just bought some stuff from us. There's so many. Dan Estrin, again, from Hoobastank, has bought things from us recently. A number of times we sold to Bob Dylan. He's been a customer for many years. Crosby, Stills and Nash, the band, as I said, and a lot of people. We supplied instruments to a number of movies too, like The Last Waltz, which I think is the greatest rock and roll music documentary ever. We did Spinal Tap. I don't know if you know that. This is Spinal Tap, which is a mockumentary. It's a comedy with Chris Guest. The Temptations story when they did... It's kind of a documentary on the Temptations, Why Do Fools Fall in Love. That was the Frankie Lyman story.
So there's definitely been some big names involved in it. Do you sell anything else other than guitars, or obviously you've got amps and stuff like that?
We do amps, we do electric basses, occasionally an upright bass. We do mandolins. It's ukuleles, some banjos. It's fretted instruments, but it's primarily guitars. We do a lot of memorabilia, and we have been one of the main suppliers to the Hard Rock Cafes for the last 40 years. And when they get stuff from us, that it is authentic. I just sold a guitar that I did a trade with Tom Petty, and I got this guitar that he played with Bob Dylan on the tour in like 87, 88. There's actually a video of him using that guitar in Australia, and he was wearing a top hat. And I had the top hat and the guitar that he used when he was out with Bob Dylan. And I had it, and normally I wouldn't have sold it, but, again, I'm 71 years old. There's a time I've enjoyed it, and, somebody who got it really was a Tom Petty fan, and he was a very good guitar player, and he was really happy to own the guitar. So, again, we're just kind of, it's kind of like a hotel for however long we may have the instruments, and then hopefully it goes on to somebody else that appreciates it, and if it's well taken care of, it keeps being passed on and on.
What makes a guitar rare?
What makes it valuable? Rare is one thing. There could be one of something that nobody cares about. So that's rare, but nobody cares. It's supply and demand that make things rare. Like late 50s Les Paul standards, for instance. There were about 1,800 of them made, but millions of people want them. Very collectible and in demand. And again, a lot of the companies now, they do new guitars, and they'll do limited editions, and sometimes there's one, or there might be 20, or there might be 100 or 500. And that would make them rare, but that doesn't necessarily make them in demand.
Obviously with Gibson, they had, reissue guitars that we get through to Australia. For instance, the Epiphone Paul McCartney Texan, $110,000 instrument, proceeds going to landmines and things like that. So what's the most expensive guitar sale you ever made, if you're allowed to say?
I don't like to reveal the exact amounts, but let's say there's been a number of Sunburst Les Pauls and Flying V's over $250,000 US. There's a number of Martin guitars, pre-war D45s that could be in that range or more. 00045s, OM45s. I just recently got a 0045 from 1923. I have a 00045 from 1928. I have a 1930 OM28. I mean, this is a different language to most people, but these are major collectible instruments. And then old Fenders, of course, the old Stratocasters and Telecasters, Broadcasters, Fender basses, on and on. Martin acoustics, there's a lot of really great Gibson acoustics as well. I've had a couple really major Gibson acoustics, like a Rosewood 1940 J200 that was on the cover of my second book. That sold for a lot of money. A lot of pre-war Gibsons. But there's a lot of things that I call sleepers, which are still not overpriced, and where you could buy them, and there's a very good chance that over a reasonable amount of time they might double and triple in value. And then there's other ones that are so sought after right now that they're very high priced. So for them to double in value, that might be more of an unusual experience. I mean, and a lot of it, I always tell people, don't buy something because somebody tells you it's collectible or this, that. You got to love it. And the whole joy of having a guitar is not to just point at it and show it to your friends, but to be able to play it, have a connection.
If you had to say top 5 instruments that you've got in the collection that are, say, your favourites that you'd never part with.
Well, I've parted with a lot of things that I would have never parted with, but I still have a lot of really beautiful stuff. I have a lot of old Fender 50s Stratocasters and 60s Stratocasters, and I have a number of old Fender basses, a lot of great Martin acoustics. I don't have as many Les Pauls and Flying V's as I once had because they commanded so much money that I just figured at this point in my life, at my age, might as well pass them to somebody who is going to enjoy them. And, they're very, very pricey, and it eliminates a lot of people who can afford those kind of instruments. And there's a lot of great reissue guitars that are, in my opinion, 95%, 90% the quality of the old ones. The old ones, they used old wood and old workmanship and all that, and they were very individual. But the new ones are very user-friendly. The companies have really woke up because for a number of years, the Japanese started making guitars like in the 70s and 80s, and companies like Gibson, Fender, and Martin weren't paying attention. And a lot of, they were making copies of the Gibson, Fenders, and Martins. And eventually Gibson realized that there was a demand for these old guitars. They started reissuing a lot of the great things that they once did.
They did a lot of modifications, but went back, didn't they, in time? So
Can't improve upon perfection.
how do you find these collectors? Or obviously they find you, but if you've got an instrument that you know, do you decide that you're ready to sell it, or are people looking for something in particular and they come to you? How does it sort of work with your clients?
Because we've been in business so long, people contact us. But we have this thing, this Guitar of the Day thing that we do, where we feature a lot of instruments. And a lot of those instruments get sold within the first few days of us putting the video up. So it's kind of a, you know, we talk about the instrument, the history of the instrument, what people need to know about it, and then they get to hear it with somebody good playing it. So they can actually hear what the instrument does.
So what kind of people are these people that have this dispensable cash that they can treat themselves? Because I know a lot of people, you know, their wives would kill them if they knew that they were buying guitars. The men used to come into the shop, I remember when I used to work there, and they, don't tell my wife about this one, I'll be in so much trouble.
There's a lot of wives that would probably like to kill me, so yeah. I don't want to, that's too political, I better stay out of that. A lot of people that did buy and have kept the things for a long period of time, it's been a fantastic investment. The prices have gone way up. And if you are a savvy buyer and you know what you're buying and you buy something that's good, and if you like it, hopefully somebody else will like it. So, and that's why I always say it's not what somebody else tells you you should like. It should be something that you pick up, play, feel, love. And if you have a connection with it, there's a good chance somebody else will too.
What about the appreciation of guitars in terms of value? What kind of instruments have you seen in your lifetime? What have you seen that's appreciated the most?
Sunburst Les Pauls, which are now $250,000 to $500,000. You could buy kind of a bad example maybe for $150,000. They were about $800. And at the time they were $800, people were complaining, going, $800? Are you crazy? Who would pay $800 for a guitar? Then they went to $1,500, and people were going, $1,500? That's insane. Then they went to $2,500, and people were crying and moaning. They went to $5,000. When they got to about $50,000, people were going, you know, this might be a good investment. So it took a little while for them to pick up on it. So, you know, again, over time proves out, you know, what's going to hold value and what's going to go up. But they've been a terrific investment. It's one of the things that we manufactured here that we did very, very well. And, you know, and like the amps that are made in England, you know, the Vox amps and the Marshall amps, they've gone way up. Stradivarius violins, obviously, have done the same thing.
I remember my dad telling me some stories about, you know, he had a rep friend of his that used to work for Gibson, and they used to go sort of like, what do you call it when you go picking, you know? You
on a safari.
Yeah, going guitar hunting, you know, like down south and all sorts of stuff.
Back in the late 60s, when I was living in Miami, and there was no internet, there was no, there weren't a lot of stores that carried these things. So I would go to different towns, and I would go to the Musicians Union, and the Musicians Union would have a handbook with a list of all the players, and they would be listed by instrument. So I would call a lot of these older guys, and I would say, you know, I'm in town and I'm interested in buying old guitars, and I've got cash and I'm ready to go. In fact, my wife came up with this thing. She said, well, cowboys play guitar. Why don't we call people that have horses for sale and ask them if they have guitars for sale? And it actually worked. You know, now you can go on the internet, there's sites, and, you know, it's pretty, I don't want to say easy to find the most desirable things, but there's a lot of information out there. Back then, there was no information.
When he tells these stories about finding stuff at garage sales, or it would be like, you know, a widow that was getting rid of her husband's collection, it's a lot more exciting than what you see now. I mean, it's a lot harder to find really great vintage instruments. So.
Well, it was kind of like panning for gold. You know, you put your pan in the water, and then all of a sudden you look down and go, whoa.
And you're talking like pre-war and things like that. People that may have died in war and you know, their families had these instruments and they didn't even know what to do with them, hanging on to them for years under the bed.
You know, a lot of these instruments have a story and a history to them, and sometimes we'll never know. Sometimes I find out the history after I've sold a guitar. You know, I sold one guitar to Joe Bonamassa, which was a Flying V, And I had the guitar for about 35 years. And in about 35 minutes, he found out more history on the guitar than I did in 35 years. He had a whole bunch of his people looking up things, and next thing you knew, he found out it came from this place called Amos Arthur Music that was in Indianapolis, or in Indiana, I believe. And there was a picture of the guitar teacher at that store in '58 on the roof holding the guitar, because it was very futuristic looking, a flying V, in '58. And Joe actually bought a ticket for the guitar, flew to Indiana, got on the roof of that store, which is still in business, Amos Arthur Music, and took the same picture of him posing like the guitar teacher did in '58.
If only they could talk, these guitars, what they've been through. Why do us as human beings, why are we driven to make music, do you think?
It's a way of expression. Some people can't, maybe aren't great with their vocabulary or the way they put sentences together or whatever. It's a way for you to communicate your feelings, sometimes without you doing it in words. So it's art. Somebody paints a picture, they may not have all the social skills that a lot of people do, but they can communicate through their art. And that's what music is.
And so why do you think there's benefits, obviously, for learning music?
People tend to they learn a few tunes and they'll play them over and over and over. But if you're introduced to new things all the time, it's building your vocabulary. And it's like when you learn to speak, if you have a limited amount of words, you can only say so much. But when you have that vocabulary, whether, if you're studying chords that are more jazz type chords, or if you're studying, different styles of music, it just broadens your reserve of what you can go to if you want to, draw from that. You may only use a certain chord 5 times in your life, but you'll never use it if you don't know it. So that's why you go to people that do know these things, and it's a shortcut to get you to, be able to improve your art and to be able to say what you've got to say.
The SoundLab ebook, Why Learn Music? A comprehensive guide to the benefits of learning music is out now. We've put decades of music learning concepts in this ebook especially for you. This is a must-read for anyone looking to grow to their full music learning potential. Visit our website to get your free ebook today.
Music is love, and I think it's just something that is kind of a universal language that, people from all sides of the political spectrum, people from all different countries speaking different languages, when they hear something that means something to them, it brings them all together. You can sit at a concert and watch a fantastic act, and you may be sitting next to all different kinds of people, and they're all having a great time.
Thank you so much for talking to me today. It's absolutely amazing to have the two of you on screen in front of me. I was so excited when you said you'd have a talk to me. Your career and your life, Norm, I think you've had a very interesting time of it. Also, Sarah, it's great that you're involved in the family business as well. So I think that's really wonderful of you two guys to take the time to speak to me today. So I really appreciate it.
Well, you're doing a great job,
Yes.
and keep passing on that information, and say hello to the folks for me, and love to all of you.
Thanks for joining us today. All the best.
Thank you.